You know what
Backpacking America
is, right?
It's fucking awesome.
It's Backpacking America, an analytical podcast. Execute episode 66. You know I had to come at you with the Star Wars reference for this one. That's about all the fun we're going to have today because we're going to start talking about Turning Point USA, which has a chapter at Oneonta's campus. Okay, so where do I even begin? The local chapter hasn't really done anything like crazy except for like make cringe memes about AOC, comparing her to socialism and just saying socialism sucks. So like that's not that terrible, but like the national organization who they're affiliated with is pretty shady and concerning. So we're just gonna go through that. The first one being they have a professor watch list. So Turning Point USA maintains a professor watch list, which is really a directory of university professors across the U.S. who have been flagged by the right-wing group for supposedly promoting liberal-based points of view. Students are invited to submit a tip about professors they feel should be included on the list. The professor watch list currently contains several hundred professor entries with descriptions of their liberal statements and views. The site has drawn intense criticisms even from fellow right-wing advocates and donors in the Koch network, who actually funds TPUSA. Sarah Ruger, the director of free speech initiatives for the Charles Koch Institute, said, "It's truly McCarthyism 2.0. It's a platform that exists to put the names and the profiles of self-identified progressive professors out there and encourages conservative students to intimidate them. If there's anything political tribes can agree on today, it's that they all want to censor someone. They just disagree on who should be silenced. That's entirely antithetical to who we are." So you know it's bad when someone from the Koch network and the Charles Koch Institute is saying that Turning Point is doing something that's bad. And they're one of their biggest funders. There's also been use of dark money for right-wing student government candidates. So there's also a report by the Chronicle of Higher Education detailed what it called Turning Point USA's stealth plan for political influence. The report alleges that the organization funneled money to certain candidates for student government in violation of the administrative rules of various schools across the country. The report was in line with Turning Point USA's Campus Victory Project, which sought to commandeer the top office of student body president at each of the most recognizable and influential American universities. Once TPUSA allies controlled student government, the groups would influence the student office holders to fulfill a political agenda. That agenda would include defunding progressive student organizations, removing bans on campus hate speech, and blocking a school from adopting a boycott, divest, and sanctions movement against Israel. Not to mention, the TPUSA also has ties to the fossil fuel industry. Charlie Kirk has engaged in fundraising at closed-door meetings of the National Mining Association and the Independent Petroleum Association of America. Turning Point USA has also written numerous publications and organized student activities in support of the fossil fuel industry. One such publication was titled 10 Ways Fossil Fuels Improve Our Daily Lives. Now, if that wasn't enough cringe for you today and concern, here's the last one while I take a sip of water. And trust me, this isn't a recurring meme. My throat just dies at the worst times possible. God, that is some good water. I feel like my water drinking is going to be more of a hallmark than the obligatory burp. There we go. The Backpacking America burp. So, TPUSA is also funded by Prager University, or PragerU as it's commonly known. And they recently put out a video which glorified Robert E. Lee's history by saying that the video said that slavery was a bigger evil for white men than for black people, and saying that they also made Lee out to say that he was sympathetic towards the Union, and his home is now where Arlington National Cemetery is. And I'm just like, well, hold up. You just said that slavery was a bigger evil for white men than for black people as a whole. Uh, that's the first issue. Ugh, I threw up in my mouth from how disgusting this is. Two, um, they were celebrating that John Brown, who led a slave revolt, they were celebrating his execution. What the fuck? like, like this is who's funding TPUSA, who is now on our campus. All of this that I just said to you is what is propelling this organization. Now, my proposal for dealing with them is the following. Okay? So I'm going to pull up my notes. We need a united front. And basically what that means is we all need to band all these separate groups together on campus to form one giant alliance to promote public awareness of this group, what its intentions are, what has motivated them in the past. And we need to alert the proper people. We need to alert professors. We need to alert the student association. We need to alert campus administration to monitor this group to make sure they don't wild out. They don't promote things like watching your professors and intimidating them. We need to make sure that our people of color and our LGBTQ community feel safe on this campus. So we need to make sure that they're properly educated on self-defense, on, how to avoid people like this, and how, campus resources that exist and community resources that exist to help them if they are harassed. And that's just, a basic thing that organizations at SUNY Oneonta have been doing. I know that, but it needs to be included in this. We need to make sure that the people in general that are already tight about them need to be rallied in a way that is now effective. We need to make that anger effective anger. So that means we need to monitor, challenge, critique, and stand together to elevate our demands around, racial justice and economic justice to be organized and cohesive, so that way we can actually get, results. By monitoring, challenging, and critiquing and standing together, this is what I mean. We make sure they're not targeting professors or really anyone for their viewpoint. We need to make sure that people aren't being intimidated for, speaking out against tyranny and against racism and economic injustice. We need to challenge those viewpoints. So when that happens, I had to take something out of my mouth. I'm sorry, y'all. When this is a mess. When that happens, we need to challenge them rigorously, even if it's in a classroom setting. I don't care if your professor thinks it's rude. Challenge them. They're fascists. We can't let that. We cannot tolerate fascism. These people literally glorified Robert E. Lee, and they are making a watch list of progressive professors. Not happening. That's not happening. That puts the ALS, WGS, and communications department at intense risk if this organization grows and builds. It has potential to. The culture of the campus is heavily split between right-wing and liberal to left. So there's a very large possibility it could grow. Young Americans for Liberty already has 30-something people, and the Democrats are kind of dwindling, and Democracy Now! Is kind of dwindling, if that's any indication of where the political alignment is going on campus. So by challenging and critiquing, we rip apart their points. We need to make sure that they look stupid because their points are stupid. It's a very whitewashed way of looking at history without the nuance or the context. And I sat in a meeting of TPUSA. It was a Zoom call, and it had all the different branches in New York, sitting in the Zoom call. And I basically sold those kids onto Marxist-Leninism without them knowing it. And when I told them, the field organizer was like, and then banned me from the call because I was so effective in getting them to kind of, wiggle. They're stupid kids, and they can't see, the nuance of things. They can't see the reality of things because they're so blinded by what they're told. They don't critically engage with it. Because they feel that if they critically engage with it, they're going against conservatism in America. So we need to challenge and critique them to blow holes in that to make them understand that, hey, this is stupid. And then we need to stand together for when that's not enough. And by that, I mean, if there's people in your community, like for my off-campus students, right, or my on-campus students, if there's people that are in this organization that are targeting you for being a socialist, for being gay, for being open-minded, for being a professor even, if they come to your dorm, if they come to your house, if they try to harass you on your way home, provide aid to them. Walk them home. Stand outside their door if there's really a credible threat. Make sure that they're reaffirmed and positively, say, listen, you're very valued for thinking the way you're thinking. This is just something we have to deal with as, a group of people that have always been oppressed or that think differently. These are just things that we need to do. We need to positively reaffirm people. We need to protect people when they're in danger, if they're in danger. Right now, it's just 1 or 2 kids running this thing, but it has the potential in the later years to grow. And that's something we need to make sure doesn't happen, which is why we need to start acting now by alerting the SA, the campus community, and the respective departments and professors, really, of every department, is a unified grouping. Activist groups have to come together. Students have to come together in large groups, whether they're affiliated with these organizations or not. As long as there's multiple people issuing the same demands, then it has weight. So if multiple letters from multiple groups are sent, to the school, to the student association, to professors, warning them of these dangers and letting them know that we as people, if the school is not going to do it, we as people are going to monitor, challenge, critique, and stand together to make sure that our demands for justice, racially and economically, are met, and we will continue to organize to refine these demands and put them into action. That's something we need to do to combat these guys, because this is like, it's really terrifying that a group like this is coming to campus, that, they have the funding and the history to do stuff like this. They brought Caitlin Bennett to a campus a few years ago. They've brought controversial white supremacists and conservatives that have said very racially charged things, basically like a step away from saying, black people are inferior. We need to make sure that these people don't have a foothold. And that really requires, doing things that we've never done before at this campus, which is uniting firmly and actually trying to get something done without it fizzling out. Actually committing ourselves to anti-fascism, which is why this united front should also encompass not just fighting TPUSA, but other strains of fascism, and making the community very well aware of symbolism that exists to signify Nazism as a presence. I know the school has a wonderful diagram of hate symbols put out by the Anti-Defamation League. That's a good thing that should be passed around to students and staff alike. There should be more community accountability whenever racial acts are seen, and I think our community does a really great job with calling out racism, sexism, homophobia. I'm very proud of everyone that does that, and I think that work needs to continue. And I think there needs to be steps taken to make sure that doesn't happen. I think it's up to every student and every professor to make sure that anti-fascism is worked into the curriculum, but not done in a way that feels like you're shouting information, more engaging with the material to show like how fascism, is relevant to the course. Now, I don't know how you can make fascism relevant to statistics. Anti-fascism, really, I don't know how you can make that relevant to a statistics class, but to a communications class, it's like, it's important to have media democracy, for example, and have open-minded people in the media to make sure that racism doesn't seep its way in. Or let's, notice different there was a lot of people in my senior seminar class and classes beforehand that make wonderful presentations about racial stereotypes in the media and critique the visibility issues with minority communities on television, movies, radio, which, that work is very much needed. I just wish it was more part of the curriculum, which is why I'm openly challenging professors to put that in your lesson plans for the next semester and, make sure that students are critically engaging with what is fascism, why is it bad, and how do we make sure it doesn't spread, and how do we make sure its isms that come with it aren't put in, such as classism and racism and homophobia, sexism. Those four things are very, very signatory to fascism, and they need to be rooted out. Some people say, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal," blah blah blah, and it's like, well, it is a big deal. We're a capitalist country, and our country, our society produces content and culture based off of the means of production, how they're operated. I covered this in the last episode. And, with base and superstructure, I would look it up. Very good concept. Basically, fascism is a part of capitalist life. It's an extreme reaction when capitalism is in crisis. America is in crisis right now. Economically, we've been stagnant for the past 20, 30 years. There's been social issues time and time again that just keep bubbling up and bubbling up. We're getting ourselves involved in imperialist war after imperialist war. Our national debt is now $27 trillion and continuously going up with the pandemic. So fascism is naturally coming about because it's an extreme reaction to the decaying life of a capitalist society. So this is actually very natural for our country, especially considering, the past with Jim Crow and slavery. So it makes complete sense that this is, happening. And it's not happening because of Trump. Trump is just a symptom of the larger problem, which is capitalism and our naturally exploitative culture. So that's why this work is so important. That's why this united front, what I'm proposing, is such a big deal. That's why it's so important to continue the fight against TPUSA and other fascist tendencies that show up. This isn't the first time fascism has came to the campus. This has been a big issue since, as far as I could remember, December 2018, when white supremacist literature was littered all over the campus, and the FBI had to get involved. That's how bad it was, the FBI. So they're out there. The Nazis are out there, the fascists are out there, and there's no need or reason to be afraid. Do not be afraid, because they will not be able to hurt a single one of us if we're united, if we fight back, if we're consistent, and we consistently alert each other of potential dangers and real dangers. Right now, TPUSA is the potential danger to intimidate liberals on this campus, progressives, socialists, communists, anarchists. They have the potential to. Because the structure's there. They have funding. It's a national organization. They have the potential to bring in very right-wing controversial speakers to the campus. They have the potential to derail a conversation, and they have the potential to make people unsafe. They have the potential to threaten someone's well-being. But they are not actively doing that. It's one person, maybe two people. But it could grow, as evidenced from other incidences around the country of TPUSA doing such things. From what I've noticed in that chat I was in, they're very misinformed kids, and they're just trying to do something. They're basically being manipulated by people that are more experienced than them, but equally as dumb and misguided, and that needs to be combated. A lot of it is just ignorance. So if we combat ignorance by educating the people, then we'll be able to fight fascism. That's the whole reason fascism exists. It's very easy to get swindled into it. The key is that we are good. We're good people that need to show them that fighting for fascist tendencies and nationalism is actually detrimental to them as workers, as working class people, because they are shooting themselves in the foot from getting union benefits by advocating this. They are shooting themselves in the foot by attacking immigrant workers and workers of color because they're dividing the working class. They're contributing to the boss exploiting everyone in that workshop, factory, storefront, wherever you will go to work. They're contributing to that, to what their boss wants, which is workers disunited so they're easier to exploit, so that way more profit can be rendered for the corporation or for the business. That is why we need to combat fascism, because it also, of course, harms people of color. I mean, look at what fascism has done. It put the Jews in concentration camps. It segregated black people in the South. It countless acts of violence against people of color, against different religious groups. And for what? This is why I believe that we cannot have tolerance of the intolerant, because it will just make a society of intolerance. We can't let it exist in some small pocket and let it be a small pocket. We have to monitor it to make sure it stays as a small little pocket that we could just stamp out when it gets too crazy. We didn't do that in World War II. We didn't do that when we declared independence from Great Britain. We let those tendencies fester, and look at what happened. Look at what happened, seriously. And it's going to happen again and continuously over and over and over again unless we actually learn from the past and apply those lessons to the present, which is now. So let's band together, let's put our differences aside, and let's really make sure that we're keeping everyone safe, that we're watching out for each other, that we're constantly challenging and critiquing, and that we consistently apply pressure to the correct parties so that way these people cannot gain power. So they cannot influence student government, so they cannot influence local government, so they cannot intimidate people for thinking differently than them. Thanks for listening, y'all. Make sure to give BPA a follow on Instagram at Backpacking America and Twitter at BPA Podcasting. Make sure to like BPA on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube. The links can be found in the podcast description. Until then, take it easy and stay breezy.